Hey, Daniel, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Tell us who you are and what do you do?
Well, I am a marketing practitioner by trade. I've spent my career in B2B marketing, and a few years ago, decided to strike out on my own with a couple of guys I'd worked with in the past to start an agency up. And today, we help people build demand generation and account-based marketing programs from the ground up. I think about it a little bit as a general contractor for your marketing team, where we help you kind of piece it all together and scale it up so you can run it. So my life has been really around my professional life anyway. It has really been a lot around demand generation and revenue marketing and driving efficiencies and some of the lessons learned from that. So that's a little bit about my background. But me personally, I am a father first. I got two kids. I'm also an avid motorsports enthusiast. I'm looking forward to a race this weekend, so that'll be fun. And then I'm a little bit of a serial entrepreneur at this point. Been just starting up a couple of different businesses. Most recently, my wife and I have started her business up and really trying to apply some of the lessons learned from these different experiences over the last few years to keep going. So,
Very cool. How did you guys get started in your agency? Was it by accident? Did what happened?
yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we got started really when when I was starting my career out, I kind of got lucky. I got recruited out from school through a project to start up demand generation and marketing for a family owned like 400 employee company working for the CEO. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I was straight out of school, but I got to work straight for the CEO and basically build it from the ground up. And a couple of years into that, I got recruited to do it again for a Danaher operating company, a big conglomerate. And a couple years after that, I got recruited to do it again for another big conglomerate called Acuity Brands. And then a couple years later, I got recruited to do it again for a SaaS or a technology startup. And along the way, I met some of the other co-founders, Frank at Danaher and Mick at Acuity, and then at Phononic. And just over the years, we kind of built our approach and methodology for scaling up demand generation to kind of revolutionize marketing at some of these businesses that were a little bit more old school in how they're approaching it. And so after doing that a few times, we kind of got our thoughts together on how to really ride the wave of ABM and try to apply some of what we learned of starting and scaling and get down the path of helping people build and scale account-based marketing programs. So that's where I got started.
Now, and how remind us or let everybody know how many people do you guys have in your team?
Well, I guess if you look at our W-2s. I think we're at 13 or 14, somewhere in that range. I know I should know that, but I'd have to add it up. We've had a couple of turnover and some recs, and then we also have a fairly big staff of 1099s that we work, which is I think about five of those. And then also for our clients, we many of our clients we source the BDRs for the programs, so we have six or seven BDRs as well that we staff up. So it's fluctuating in the low 20s or somewhere thereabouts right now.
Cool. And what when you guys were starting out, how long did it take you guys to get over the million mark, to reach over the seven figure mark? I feel a lot of agency owners feel that that's kind of like a cap. How long did it take you guys? Because obviously you guys are in the multi-million mark. So
Uh, I'm pretty sure we did it in the first year. Like when I left my job at Phononic, I had one contract and it was for $15,000, and this is probably TMI, and I had $21,000 in my checking account. I was like, well, I got to make enough money to pay my bills this year, and without cracking my 401k, and so then like 3 months later, we signed our first retainer, and it was like $3,000 a month or something like that. And then about 2 months after that, about 6 months into it, we signed our first actual retainer. And we spent the time kind of building like what should that look like. And the first retainers we were running were like somewhere in the $15,000 a month range. And then it was pretty fast after that. So if you, depending on where you want to start the clock, if you want to start it where I quit my job, then it was over a year. But if you started from where we signed our first like real client, within the first year, and I would say that we've probably grown 2x each year since, or somewhere thereabouts. But yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, when did you start realizing that you needed to charge more per retainer? You know, because you start off small, and I'm glad you guys got there at a year mark. Like a lot of times it takes people a long time to get there, but what was the thing that was enabling you to reach that mark faster than most?
Well, I don't want to discount the camaraderie, I guess, between Frank, Mick, and I, the co-founders. You know, basically we all went on it like on a prayer. We didn't pay ourselves for basically the first year. Um, Mick and Frank took IOUs basically, and I paid myself the bare minimum to be able to pay my bills because I quit my job and I needed to pay my bills. And so we were all in from the beginning on like believing in the long run and trying to scale the business. We had learned a lot about building and scaling through our times working together in the past. And Frank and I have been working together since 2012. So we kind of cheated in that we know each other a long time, and we had kind of common goals. And I basically talked Mick and Frank into doing it with me, and we kind of just came along and did it. And so I think definitely there was some real strong partnership in that. And I think also recognizing your strengths, the whole yin and yang. I am not good with details. I'm very much the big picture, like we do all this stuff. And Mick is the guy who's really good on the details and has the experience to put that to practice. And so having Mick come in and run the company, and having me come in and focus on what should we be doing, and having Frank come in and actually operationalize it was huge. And so I think that's really why we were able to go so quickly,
Yeah.
just because we had a bunch of people that were really dedicated to getting it off the ground.
Well, and I don't want to skip over too, because I think this is important. Is for the first year, you guys were getting paid kind of IOU or very little, and so you guys were investing back into the agency. So the money that you were bringing in, because you're over a million, what roles did you hire? What were you investing in order to grow and scale the agency?
Yeah, that's a great question. We have definitely invested a lot in people. People. We all learn the lessons in our careers of the value of good people, and we all kind of hold the. I don't want to speak for everybody else. So speaking for myself, although I could probably speak for everybody else, we all like the idea of being surrounded by smart people doing good work, and so putting our kind of, if you will, money into that was very important to us. And it kind of comes back to also your question around like when did you decide you weren't charging enough. And first, when we first started, I had this idea that we wanted to basically help a business build and launch ABM programs holistically end to end for the same price it would cost you to hire a single director of ABM. And so I was shooting for a burden cost, somewhere in the $15,000 a month range, and that was how we priced it. We're like, oh, let's just come in for less than what you'd have to go hire the first guy, basically. And I just knew that's where it started for a lot of people, because that's how it started for me, like 4 times in a row. So that's what we were aiming for. And so taking that as some of the context, and then understanding that we were trying to be kind of your fractional ABM team or demand gen team, operations was definitely the hottest, most thing. Basically, standardizing the processes, documenting the processes, having processes, because basically it was all just in my head, because I was trying to take these processes that I had been using for years, in one shape or another, and put them into something not only that's written down, but also that makes sense for an agency and not for an internal practitioner. And so our very first hire, I remember we actually contracted a recruiter, which was a big expense for us. I mean, because they take 30% or whatever, so it was really expensive, to go find an operations person to help us basically stand up the back end systems and process of just documenting everything. So that was the first hire. And then from there, our next couple of hires, our next significant dollars invested into people, because we had some fractional people for a period of time, was still around fleshing out the execution of the process. I mean, for the first year, maybe even 18 months, I was basically the only client facing person, and I was working like 8 o'clock in the morning until 6 o'clock for dinner. Then I'd stop, and then I'd start back at 9 o'clock, and then I'd work to about 2 or 3 in the morning. And I did that for a year and a half, and we had clients. And one of the reasons we signed clients in India is because I could work late at night for the clients in India. So we had some clients in India, so we were late. So I was basically just trying to just get as many things rolling as we could, and then staffing behind it as much operational support and process support as we could, because we knew, and we believe that you have to have process. You have to be standardized in how you execute to be able to grow. So that was the first real wave, and then it was capability, a few sets of capabilities that we wanted to shore up, I guess, like execution capabilities, and then we went real hard, probably too hard, on leadership, like expensive leadership, and some of those decisions didn't work out because we were still figuring out, we were building the plane while we're flying it, and there's a lot of ambiguity, and it's tough to have a lot of leaders in that environment. So we staffed up pretty heavy on some pretty expensive functional leaders, like account management and
Yeah.
sales management, stuff like that. That we had a couple people turn over, which I don't hold it against them in any way. So I think we doubled down quite a bit in year two on leadership, high end leadership, to be able to scale. And I think we made the right decisions, and I don't think we regret doing it, but we learned some lessons in the
Yeah.
process. And now, coming into year three, give or take, I get my dates backwards because it's such a blur. We've put a lot of the money now into execution, like staffing for execution. Still, though, I would say more than you would expect, like project management, operations stuff on the back end as well.
How did you, for the first year or 18 months, you're working around the clock, getting paid very little? There's a lot of people listening in that can relate, that may have gone through this, or maybe they're going through it now. How did you stay inspired or motivated to keep going?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's obviously a big topic, and I can certainly relate. I mean, a small story. I guess you'd say mentor by Sangram Vadre, pretty well known in this space. I was having breakfast with him one day, and he was laughing about starting up Terminus, and how way back in the day of starting up Terminus, he had his workshops timed so well that when he could step out for the workshop, he would go take a nap and then come back into the workshop and keep running the workshop. And I remember laughing about it. And there's a lot. The tone around this has changed a lot. There's a lot more tone around, like, it's not okay to work that much, and you really need to slow down, and more work life balance and stuff like that. But there absolutely was a period of time where the tone was like, you're sleeping in the office. That's how hard you're working. And to a degree, I kind of professionally grew up during that time. So it was always I was always expected to work hard. Even my first job out of school, I was expected to be the first one there and the last one out. So I was opening the bullet building, closing the building, working for the CEO. It was just how, fortunately or unfortunately, I was professionally raised, if you will. So I mean, the motivation. I mean, first I got to give credit to Mick and Frank for helping, and to others on the team, to keeping it moving, because it is a lot, and definitely have to give credit to my wife for sure for that side of the house as well. But I don't know. I've always just been passionate about helping people solve their problems, and the whole reason why I wanted to do this was because I really wanted to help people solve their problems. And I think of demand gen and marketing as basically one giant problem solving effort. And to use your words, the people who can solve the biggest, most complex problems the fastest and most efficiently win. And I've always lived my career that way, and that's what I was trying to do. So I think it was a lot. It was a lot, and without getting into the darker sides of it, because you can definitely get burned out.
Yeah.
A good strong support system and just staying focused.
Yeah. Well, I remember when I came out of school, that was kind of the norm. And, I worked for Arthur Anderson, and you used to get like a badge of honor, and be like, did you hit 90 hours this week? I'm like,
Yeah,
if I hit 90 hours a year, like I'm pissed. I'm like a week. Holy cow! Like that's a lot. And you mentioned Terminus, the Terminus in Atlanta, right?
Yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
I know them. I remember. Yep, I'm from Atlanta. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Well, Terminus, I probably am responsible for the single person who's bought the most Terminus ever. I don't know because I mean, literally millions of dollars of Terminus at this point. And I started working with them in 2015. And actually, when I left, before I got going hard with Mick and Frank, I negotiated with Terminus. Could I be a partner or like a resale partner for them? And I had done so many referrals for them that they basically, their CRO at the time was like, yeah, we'll work something out for you. So we were actually the first Terminus partner because of all that work I had done with Terminus and even Sangram
mhm.
Padres kind of mentorship and stuff like that. And that was kind of where we got started.
Small world, very small world. What was the turning point or for kind of year two of bringing on some of, and why did you think you needed to bring on other leaders in the organization? Because there's three of you. You guys are the leaders. What was your mentality around bringing on those, and which roles did you throw out the plane while you were building the plane?
um, I mean, the simplest place to start that answer is blind spots. We knew we had some blind spots, like namely, the first leader we wanted to bring on was somebody who actually knew how to do like actual account management as an agency, and none of us had ever been agency side, or nobody on the team had ever been agency side, so we didn't really know what that even really meant. And still today, even all these couple few years later, I still think of myself as a practitioner and not an agency, and so the first one was really around how can we shore up that capability and just have a critical thinker who's helping us kind of define what does customer success look like, and what's that function need to be, and what kind of roles we need to staff, and really we didn't really even understand, we didn't even understand we needed account managers. We didn't have account managers for like over a year and a half, and because we were basically using strategists for that. So I think that was the first one, and you don't know what you don't know, and how someone views account management and customer success is greatly shaped from like their professional background and where they've been and what kind of work they've done. And so there were some lessons learned on how to think about that. And also, we were just still getting our thoughts together. To be honest, we were moving so far so fast that we didn't really know. And so that was the first one, and we ended up going a slightly different direction. But and then the
That
next
person got
one,
thrown out of the plane.
uh, she jumped out of the plane. To be fair, and if she's listening, I don't blame her. Like I understand how this happens, but yes, she jumped out of the plane,
There you
and
go.
so I think,
Did you give her a parachute at least?
I mean, that's as
I'm
much as
just
she
kidding
wanted.
with you. I'm just kidding.
So, uh,
What
yeah,
was the second leadership role that came in? Or what was the leadership role? What was the next leadership role that worked out?
honestly, reorganizing the company to make me responsible for more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I lived on an island for too long. I think I was in visionary land of mapping where we needed to go and what we needed to do and what the product was even going to be. And I was moving too fast for a team of people to try to keep up with. And it wasn't efficient in the long run. There's all these ideas. Everybody has lots of ideas. And believe me, I'm one of those people that's always got whatever idea. But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you need to actually go do it. And it doesn't mean that it makes sense in the long run. And I personally really struggled with, you know, drawing the line between a good idea I should do now and a good idea I should park for later. And I think that was a big lesson learned for me. But and so to that end, we reorged the company like a year, not that long ago. It was about a year ago. I don't know, all blends together. Many months ago, but probably not quite a year, so that all the client facing roles roll up under me. And then I had to start basically taking a back seat on actually running clients. So where at one point in time I ran most of the clients as a strategist, now I run the least number of clients as a strategist, and trying to basically get
was
down.
that hard for you? Because I feel like when I went through that process, at first I was like, man, this is amazing. And then I got bored because I didn't realize I needed a new role, right? And then I would go into meetings and be like, no, I'm good. I'm good. Like, did you try to come back kicking and screaming? And then Frank and Mick were like, no, no, like holding you back, like you're trying to fight people or what?
No, I mean I think it also connects to the fact that when we started Kronos, yeah, I remember having 62 opportunities in the pipe, and every single one were somebody I knew. Everybody was somebody I knew. Every client we almost every client we had in the beginning was a personal connection of mine, well, personal professional connection, and a lot of the people we hired were people that I knew. And so, I knew Mick, I knew Frank, I knew these other people that were pulling in. I knew these contractors and partners that we were pulling in. I knew the creative agencies like that I'd worked with for years. So many of those things I felt personally connected to and personally responsible for how that went. It was hard for me to remove the personal from it, and it probably took me for a variety of reasons, it took me longer than it should have to really recognize that. And so, trying to separate the business from the personal is not a bad thing. It doesn't make you a bad person, but it's really hard. It was really hard for me to come to that,
What,
and nobody can
how
tell
did
me
you
that.
come to that realization? Because there's a lot of us that have struggled with that. So was there a phrase or someone said something and then it just clicked? Like what was that? Because I think you may help some people out if there was a
Yeah,
moment.
I'm thinking about that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, to
Just
be
kind of
totally honest.
gradual.
I mean, to be totally honest, and I don't mind saying this, I had I met with a therapist for several months to help me kind of navigate that and understand that. Like when I realized that all my T-shirts were Martech T-shirts, because she pointed it out to me, I was like, oh yeah, my whole life revolves around Martech. Like I have to separate my personal identity from my professional identity, and because I had lived and breathed it so hard, and that's how we even got started, because I was on all the talk tracks, on the podcast tracks, on the presentation tracks, just out in the world talking about this stuff. I had spent so many years being so immersed in it that I just didn't realize how immersed I was into it. And then so I had to really have somebody else really kind of point it out to me. And so that was super helpful to me, just to kind of help me talk through that. So I mean, no, not everybody views it the same way, but I think, never be afraid to get a coach, or however you want to refer to it, a mentor, coach, thought partner, therapist, whatever you want to call them, to bounce some ideas off of, because that can really help you crystallize your thoughts, particularly if you're slammed. I mean, you're just wall to wall slammed. You just do not have the time to slow down. Like you kind of need somebody to just help you bounce that off and be a thought partner, in that. So that I think was probably what got me over the hump,
Yeah.
so that I stop thinking about it so personally.
Well, I applaud you for doing that, and I applaud you for saying that because a lot of people were like, "Oh, like I'll never say I go to." I'm like, why? Like, you want to better yourself? It's kind of like going to the gym or any of
Yeah,
these other things. And what people don't realize is, when we start an agency, most of the time it's by accident, and
yeah,
we want everyone to portray, or we want everybody to think we're Superman or Superwoman, right? And we know everything, and like we're perfect and portray this perfect Instagram life, and that shit just doesn't exist. And the
right.
challenge is when you're creating the agency and you're hiring this team, you want them to think you're Superman. Like you can't go to them and go, man, I'm really struggling with growing this company. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. My whole identity is tied up into this. You can't go to your team to do that. And a lot of times you have to go to the outside, a coach or whoever, in order to get a, another perspective to kind of navigate where you need to go. Because look, when you're in the weeds, you just can't, all you see is weeds. You can't
Yeah.
see, all this amazing stuff around. So bravo for getting help and listening. Some people go to, reach out for help and they don't listen. I call them ask holes. Um, so,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, and I always have benefited a lot from like reading too. Recently, I read this book, Who Not How. You're probably familiar with it,
mhm.
and it really helped me kind of think. I always think about like books as a mentor in a box. Like, what was the idea they're trying to get across? Or I read Tony Fadell's Build recently, and I've always kind of used those books to help me put a lens on that thinking. So
Mhm.
even stuff like that has been super formative. But like you said, particularly if you're in that mode of you're just working so many hours trying to get over that hump, like a book's not going to do it. Like
No.
somebody needs to like
Yeah.
help you talk through that, and it can't be somebody who's all up in your business, like literally in your business, because you're going to be blinded by that. It has to be a third perspective coming in, and it's super valuable. And I mean, it's going to save you a lot of heartache to have that conversation, whatever it might be. But yeah, I mean, we don't have to park on that. But I totally agree with you.
Cool. Awesome. Well, this has been amazing, Daniel. I appreciate you coming on the show. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would benefit the listeners listening in now?
Um, Well, I watched your podcast. I think you put it out today or in the last couple of days about AI, and I think you call it prompt engineering.
Yep.
And I've been doing a lot of that, and we've been talking about thought partnership and soundboarding and things like that. And I'll just say structuring your prompts with ChatGTP to be your stand-in sounding board has been quite an eye-opening exercise for me, and so definitely looking for assistance, from tools like ChatGPT is even. I'm only it kind of comes to mind because I watched your cast this morning about it, and so I definitely recommend thinking creatively about where you can get your thought partnership opportunities, and considering ChatGPT and things like it as a way to give you kind of quick access to a sounding board. But I mean, outside of that, I mean, I guess on this topic, just remember why you started and what you wanted to get out of it, and make sure you're getting that out of it. Because if you're not, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of my parting thoughts.
Awesome. What's the website people can go check you guys out?
We are at Khronos.agency.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. And if you guys want more of a soundboard for seeing the things you might not be able to see and be around amazing agency owners where we can give you a different perspective and tell you the different tools and technologies and frameworks and strategies that we're using that's currently working. I'd love for all of you to go check out agencymastery360.com. It's a community for like-minded agency owners that want to scale fast, have a lot of fun, and create an asset that they can really kind of build wealth, freedom, and more time. And if you just want to be around cool people, make sure you go there. So thanks so much. And until next time, have a swank day.